George Steinman, we can present you as a multidisciplinary artist. You were born in Berne. You studied graphic design, painting, music, and African-American history in Bâle and San Francisco. And you are particularly interested by the relationship between art, science, and politics. So you will present us some of your work just now, and after we will discuss about it.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really very honored and pleased. What can art and culture achieve in a time like we are living in? I guess this is like my key. Before I'm really focusing on some of my works and my processes as a transdisciplinary oriented artist, I would like to say a few things which are related to COP21 and which is also sort of like the credo from all my work as an artist. I believe that art and culture matters. Even in conflict situations, they are anything but a luxury. The promotion of arts and culture holds great potential in conflict prevention and transformation, as well as for post-conflicted reconstruction. Guided by the conviction that arts and culture can change individual life, strengthen social cohesion, bring about transformation and build bridges between communities, I believe that our society, together with state agencies, for instance like in COP21 in Le Bourget, should include arts in the debate on future viability. Dialogue is the essence of the 21st century. We live in a globalized world, we are completely interconnected and we have access to infinite information. But this will count for nothing unless we find our way to a culture of mutual respect. Only mutual understanding of different views and perspectives will allow us to resolve our current problems. I therefore believe that art which adequately meets the challenges of our time will have overcome its self-imposed isolation in the modern age. I not only want to respond with my art, but I want to enable and foster relationship and networks. I'm interested in the dialogue and cooperation, in the knowledge that the 21st century social reality has become too complex for us to indulge in a luxury of reduction to discrete academic disciplines. Let me make one thing very clear here in the beginning of our 1-hour talk. There's no time left for pessimism. We must act. Let us work today for the world of tomorrow. And if we care about our legacy for future generations, it's time now to take decisive global action. I would like to say that now during the last 3 days in Le Bourget and here in town, and especially also on this place, I've seen incredible much energy of people and concern and engagement. So that's a fantastic thing as it comes to creativity. Yes, I think we really must galvanize political and personal will across and beyond all borders. To be successful, we ought to create a symbiosis of responsibility, and this is actually the title of my working process. I'm working here for COP21, symbiosis of responsibility. This also means questioning our daily routines and practicing mitigation, credibility, frugality, and humility. I'm certain that changes towards a lastingly viable society cannot be achieved without the knowledge inherent in and imparted by art in all its aesthetics and cultural dimensions. Yes, I want even to say more. Artists have at their heart the task of transformation.
So you want to show us your work?
Well, okay, so now focusing down, as just what I said, I would like to present you and give you just a little imagination of how my transdisciplinary oriented work is manifested. Transdisciplinary means really I work a lot together with scientists, philosophers, biologists, geologists, all sorts of scientists, foresters, also, but I work together with local people, with NGOs and so on. I think this is a very important issue as it comes to crossover disciplinary work as an artist. So this one building you see here is a work I did 2 years ago, finishing. It is it's a new building as a sculpture. So the building is actually a sculpture for the biggest water purification plant in Switzerland, in the city of Berne. And this building includes in the basement a forum for water and a place for discussion about water issues and water hygiene issues especially. Then there are the offices and the laboratories from this water plant. But as I said, this place, this house is a sculpture because together with a team from architects from Switzerland, Bauart architects, we started this process from the very first scratch. And the entire building, which is entitled Art Without Work but with Impact, has been entirely built with water from 3 mineral healing sources which are in eastern Switzerland. So to say the whole building is including in the concrete, in the plaster, in the paint, in the floor, everywhere, it has been built with water I personally collected and selected and included in the building process. That also indicated, of course, that I was on the construction site for almost every day for 1.5 years to work together with the construction workers. So you don't see now when the building is finished anything at all, but it's about energy, it's about subtle layers, and especially it's about participative processes together with the scientists, as well as with the architects, and as well with the handicrafters who built the building themselves. And it was really an incredible process because in a way then it included all the handicrafters into an art piece of contemporary art. So the next building, the next picture is about dynamic process together with the University of the City of Bern, and actually was committed to make a piece for the university in Bern. But I transferred the entire budget to the poorest community in the Swiss Alps. It's a very tiny little village, only with 100 inhabitants, with all the structural problems we have, you know, no school, no shops, no post office. And I decided together with the local local people to build a bridge as a sculpture. And when you walk across this bridge, you would come to this Hermitage. It's a building which is open to the public, a little tiny box, open to the public all around the year. And it is now frequently visited since this 5 years existing time from hundreds of people all around the world. They go there for meditation, they go there for singing, they're going there, sometimes people sleep in there. So it's in an incredible, fantastic area, totally intact as it comes to ecology, a real place for contemplation, to think about what we maybe should do, what arts could do, what some person himself could do. And I know this about these visitors only because there's nothing in this place but a guest book. And this guest book, which is now the 6th one, has hundreds of remarks from people from Patagonia to Japan who leave their message for me as an artist, telling me about their experience, being there as a shelter in a snowstorm, or just going there for sitting for 2 hours and chanting, or hearing the sounds from the waterfall next to the place. So this work is a so-called growing sculpture. Growing refers to the process together with other people, in this case with local people from this village, farmers especially. I have an obsession with pristine forests all over the world, but basically from the Northern Hemisphere. And this is an example from one of the very last little parts of pristine forests you can find in eastern Switzerland, in the Romansh-speaking area. And I move in all these places, I leave no trace. I just make photographies. And I collect berries from these forests. And the reason why this image is in a kind so strangely blue is because in the development process from the photography, which is an analog photograph, is made with blueberry sap. So it's a chemical reaction between the development things and the blueberry sap. So I'm collecting blueberries since 30 years, every year, and I paint directly to the walls. I fix photographies, I make a lot of mind maps and so on. So this forest picture is developed and fixed with blueberry sap. That's the reason why it's blue. This is an image from a recent big museum exhibition I had in Switzerland, in the Art Museum of Thun. But it's basically a work which I already did once in another museum in '83. It's called The Fossil Age. And you see, it's a real railway, 1-to-1 scale. The rail trackers came to the museum with the rail to fix it, which was a real funny experience with themselves because they're working somewhere, you know, on the track, somewhere in landscape or in urban areas. Never they would build up a railway in the trains in a museum. And so they were building this entire 22-meter long railway. But there are two interventions for me as an artist. First, there's no stone gravel, but there is anthracite coal. That's this black stone you see, and this is referring, of course, very much to the fossil energies, to the fossil cycles, or especially now, again, to the recarbonization of our time, which is something of the most important things we have to reconsider as it comes to CO2 and so on and so on. And the railway tracks is by fluorescent orange paint, looks like strange orange. For I would like to mention in this work, The Fossil Age, it's real, just a fragment. And that really tells something about, it comes from nowhere and it goes nowhere. It's just a tiny little fragment, and it refers to this anthropocentric or anthropogene time, that we are using this fossil energy within no time, which is very, very old, millions of years old, and we use it within 150 years to the totally collapse. But it's, in terms of Earth history, just a tiny, tiny little fragment, indicating also that we as human beings from the industrialized Western world definitely are only just like a little tiny thing within the whole entire history of this planet. So this is the fossil age, basically from '83, but now shown again in this museum in Switzerland. And this is probably, I guess, the last image. Just gives you a little impression of the work, Symbiosis of Responsibility, the one which I'm working on, and which is the reason why I'm here as an artistic observer from the Swiss government with COP21, just to observe what really is going on in all these multi-layered dimensions of COP21. This is a picture from sort of like the doing off picture from a film we were doing where I play guitar and blues music, real down-home blues from Mississippi, directly on one of the glaciers, which has a dramatically change going on annually. This is the Rhone glacier in central Switzerland, and this glacier is melting about 8 centimeters a day. So just a few impressions about the way I work.
Yes, you speak a lot about responsibility, and you just evoked before the legacy for the future generations. But how the artist can really influence the politique in this world?
Well, that's a very multi-layered and interesting question indeed. If I look at it from the perspective as an artist, I would say that art is a form of knowledge. And it's a form of knowledge which is absolutely equal to the politics or to the science or to economics or whatever. Only there is a huge dramatic misunderstanding within this field. Art in our society, I mean, we're talking about Western society, is still basically seen as something entertaining, nice, you know, you go to a museum and then you have a contemplation kind of experience, maybe it changes a little bit your perception. But they do not think that artists have a knowledge which is equal to include them in their debates. And I think this is a most important thing, that artists claim that we want to share our knowledge, our talent, our creativity with the policymakers, for instance, in Le Bourgeois, which are totally not aesthetically oriented. In general, one could say natural science, especially also people with ecology, they have an aesthetic problem, because they only see it as an entertaining factor, but not as a shaping factor as it comes to the holistic big questions of our environmental crisis, about climate, about water, about air, and so on and so on. So, as to your question, yes, we should very much let them know that the potential of arts are equal and they cannot make their decisions anymore without the knowledge of creative people. That can be writers, that can be filmmakers, that can be visual artists, musicians, whatever. And unfortunately, this is not happening enough, but we work on that.
It's not so useful. You are an artist who were working with scientists. What was the context of this work?
Say that again, please.
You worked with scientists,
yes.
Biologists, engineers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What did you do with them? What was the context of this exchange?
Well, the basics actually is there, that I really think, you know, as I mentioned in this first statement in the beginning, you know, the most essential thing in our time is the dialogue. Because our time is far too complex as that we can make one statement and have one perspective. No, it's about multi-layered interconnectedness. It's about hearing and listening what other people say. So, I guess in the collaborations with artists and scientists, there can be very, very fruitful results. And you know, now we have like two paradigms. One is like the stubborn, really selfish, concentrated scientist who is just working on his own policy. And then there are scientists who are very open-minded and they have a certain idea. Yes, it could be worthwhile to open up, not only in the academic circles, but with other disciplines to share the knowledge. And I was looking for that for a very, very long time. And I can say, yes, there are very fruitful results. I work for the Max Planck Institute for Genetics and Molecular Biology, just as an example, in Dresden, 2.5 years. And I was very skeptical about this, because going to these laboratories with all these thousands of mice for tests and so on, I had sort of like my real critical approach. But then, step by step, we went into an emancipated dialogue. And I guess this is the way it should be, that it can be real fruitful. If it's a hierarchy between scientists and artists, there's no fruitful result. But if we do it in an equal, emancipated debate, then there can be a result which might be in the beginning very unexpectedly, but very interesting indeed. So that was true certainly for the Max Planck Institute, which then ended up in a film I did about art and science, which also included very critical questions towards the science. But nevertheless, yes, I work a lot together with forest engineers in terms of forests, you know. Sometimes they are my guides when I travel somewhere in Siberia or the Northern Urals or in Scandinavian Lapland. I have a guide with me, and it's fantastic to hear what a forester can tell you about trees and about knowledge from forests and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an interchange of knowledge and from experience. And So I really think it's worthwhile to do sort of like a dialogue together with scientists of all sorts, also in terms of philosophers. At the moment, I'm working together with a philosopher from the university in Kiel in Germany who is working in the department of ethics. And it's an entire different thing again to collaborate with a scientist who is focusing on ethics together with an artist. Very inspiring indeed.
Did you learn something with them, with a scientist, something you didn't know before and you were very surprised?
Oh, all the time, every time.
Give us an example.
I give you an example because I took that with me. You probably all have heard about that IPCC, and there are several scientists now from IPCC I've been working on in the last years, and especially now during the last 5 months, in terms of this climate change synthesis report. So as it comes to my learning about it, you know, the real final report, which is now the sort of like the basement for what is being discussed and has to come to a final paper here in Le Bourget, is a 6,500-page thick publication. And of course, nobody but the specialists are reading that. I have all these books. I'll look through them for weeks. It's very, very complex. So as it comes to communication of science and these complex issues, they also published sort of like an abstract, which is 150 pages. For the advisors from all the presidents all around the world, you know, to get like a real strong backup as an argument to persuade their presidents and to sign the treaty now. But of course, this is still too much. So this is a paper, that's the one every president from Mr. Holland to Angela Merkel and to Barack Obama has to read. From 6,000 pages down to 2 pages to make it understandable what is the key issue why they have to sign this treaty. And if you ask me what do I learn from scientists, then it's about really this kind of things, you know, very precise, unbelievably precise to the very, very last dot and word, you know. That's what is exhausting now also in Le Bourget, because they have really finally to deal with one word that all the states finally agree on. So I learn about their disciplines, and I learn about very much about their methods. But as I said before, I also hope that they learn about our methods as artists. And if we have an interchange, it might be even better than just the things. Because, you know, that's maybe one keynote as well. There are a lot of facts and figures. But facts and figures is not the only knowledge. There is other knowledge, and this other knowledge is subtle perception, the way artists look at things, and it also has a spiritual dimension, which is sort of like the third layer. Beyond all of this analytical thing, through empathy, through emotions, there is a spiritual dimension towards questions like global warming, climate change, and decarbonization. And this is a very, very subtle layer, which, of course, in our time, which is so hectical and so breathless, and so without any patience, a difficult layer. But I think it's a very, very important layer.
Yes, at the opposite of the analytic vision, you see the reality as a systemic world, and so everything is linked. And maybe it's the work of the artist to show it like that.
Oh yes, I like this expression. Yes, it's really about the links. You know, it's about interconnectedness. But a holistic interconnectedness of things, the awareness that everything is interconnected as a matter of fact. And you can talk about oceans and climate, you can talk about agriculture, you can talk about sociological dimensions, so on. Everything is totally interconnected. And amazingly enough, yesterday I was attending in Le Bourget several hours meetings by indigenous people from all over the world, from Sami to people from the Pacific Islands, and they all claimed exactly this. It's about this holistic perspective. So yes, the system is really about interconnectedness, and this refers to two aspects which I think are most important. One is the culture of respect, because interconnected also means you have to respect the other side. You have to understand and respect that there are different things which have a different perspective, but they are equal to what you think is the truth. So it's about culture of respect, and in politics, of course, this is a very, very big problem, because there it's about money, there is about power, there is about exactly clear defined hierarchies, and this is not anymore the paradigm we can use for the 21st century. And the second layer, which I think as it comes to interconnectedness, is ethics. Really, the whole issue finally is not a scientific issue, it's not a sociological issue, you know, it's not something which has to do with analytics only or with politics or so, but yes, we have to associate it to the questions which are on the ethical basics.
George Steinman, you speak about dialogue, you speak about ethic, but you know that in front of you, you have lobbies, you have advocacy organization. Do you think dialogue will be enough?
Well, now comes the subversive action from an artist. You know, I mean, how you gonna deal with the global players and how you make yourself heard as an artist, and then further on even how you gonna make that they would consider you as being somebody respectful, and they may consider that your arguments are worthwhile to negotiate or something like that. So this is a very, very difficult task. But in one or another way, you can always succeed. One is, for instance, you have to be patient. And then you have to have very strong arguments. And sometimes you just use their vocabulary to open the door. That's why, for instance, you know, I've been reading all that stuff, which is real hardcore stuff. But I read it. So if I talk together with persons who are specialists in this area, I'll let them know, this is for real, I'm serious, I know your agenda, so please listen to my agenda. And step by step, you can gain quite amazingly fruitful results. I'll give you an example. I was invited as an artist for a one-person show to Estonia in the Baltic states, right after the time when they separated from the Soviet Union time, after post-perestroika. So in fact, I was actually the first Western artist to be invited to work at the Tallinn Art Hall. And to make it short, I entirely renovated the building inside and outside as a sculpture and showed it void, empty, nothing at all, just the entire renovation. Well, that sounds very easy, but of course the problem was how to persuade the politics, even the president from Estonia, that they would support that the Western artist is financing and doing the entire renovation from the most important museum in Estonia. But through steps and many meetings and subtle negotiations, person by person, authentic encounters, not only by mail, I succeeded to do it.
Yes, you speak about to be patient, but now we are just in the middle of the COP21 here in Paris. But do you think we can be optimistic? Some of the problems are very urgent.
Yes, the problems are very, very urgent. That's absolutely no doubt. But nonetheless, once in a while, one has to calm down. I would think sometimes it would be more sustainable to just once meditate and calm down instead of just running around from one meeting to the next meeting and desperately trying to figure it out within the next 3 days to make this final paper. But as it comes to the topics, climate, not only climate, all the political issues from this 21st century, you know, yes, we are running out of time. So we have definitely to take action, but we have to do it wise. Not only with knowledge, not only on the intellectual base, but with wisdom. And that's something maybe we should a little bit talk about as well, you know. I guess the fourth or even maybe the fifth layer of all this knowledge we have is maybe wisdom. Because knowledge, we have so much access to millions and billions of data and informations daily. I mean, we can Google, we can do everything, you know. You can get all the information from Vladivostok down to southern Argentina, anything. But what does it mean that we have so much information available? All these graphics, all these balances and stuff like that, you know. There is something beyond that, and I think it's wisdom. And wisdom is not only defined through data, but it's also based on empathy.
You have a political vision of what is going on just now for the climate summit at this moment at the Bourget. What do you think about it?
I must say that this is, I have a very critical attitude, I must say, really. The critics is especially therefore because there is a huge gap between the basements and between the policymakers and the politics. Because, and you can tell right away, even in the Grand Palais today, you can see, you know, all the global major players in France, nevertheless, it's Coca-Cola or whatever, they're all representing their climate-friendly enterprises. And of course, they're taking big influences towards the politicians to make decisions or making not decisions, you know. And we have to look at this very, very critical. And once again, as to this indigenous people seminars yesterday in Le Bourget, it made me very sad in a way, and it was in a way also tragic to hear all these people living on these small islands, and they know very precisely how it's going to, you know, sink into the ocean, you know. They have real and dramatic situation. And they all said, and I really was questioning then also in the debates, they all said, we are not heard from the people which are making the policies and the decisions over there in the other tent. And this is certainly also true for other people, like artists. And funny enough, interesting enough, it's even true for certain scientists. The colleagues from this IPCC, which worked out this incredible important paper for the politics, most of them, they are not represented at COP because they say, as scientists, we are not taken serious with our policies and with our concerns. So I remain very, very critical, but just because I'm very, very critical, it is such events like this, ArtCOP21, all these artists meet and know all around the world. We know that we are working on that to overcome this kind of isolation, because they must realize artists are a shaping force.
Yes, but if you say that the scientists are not strong enough to make evaluate, to influence the policy, how the artist can be strong enough?
Well, now that's a good question. A friend of mine told me yesterday, I was just not in the room at this very moment, when Ségolène Royal said yesterday in Le Bourget in relation to climate and ocean. She said to the public, big audience, imagine, as in her role as a politician, she said, the people over there in COP21, they don't understand this issue at all. That's what she said. Now imagine, that's a desperate situation for many scientists, which are really getting depressive because their voice is not heard. They are not taken serious. And of course, it's much, much more difficult for artists. How could you say that you are a dancer or you are a filmmaker and you have really an impact on decision making? That's why artists have to be in there. They have to participate in these negotiations as an emancipated part, and not only showing in this dramatically and hectical atmosphere over there in COP21 some very nice short videos or a few pictures on the wall somewhere in the standing border. So that's not efficient.
Even some scientists don't understand themselves because, for example, biodiversity is so complex that anybody can really understand what is the mechanism of it.
Yes, you're right. All these issues are very complex. And that's also the drama of it. Because, you know, climate, all the interactions, or you mentioned biodiversity, even this, or the impact from climate change towards biodiversity is really very, very complex. But because it is complex, we have to take our time to look very precisely into the little details. You know, how is it changed by lichens as an indicator for air pollution? What is it? What it means? You know that the biodiversity in water has been changed because it's 1 degree more, and what happens if it's 1.5? What happens if it's 3 or something like that? You know, very, very complex. And there is a communication problem, how you communicate complex issues, you know. And that's the drama for the arts as well.
Some people think also that the question about the climate change can hide the other part of ecological problems. And so maybe they don't need so importance in the policy. Maybe they forget all about pollution, other problems, in fact.
Yes, and of course, therefore, I'm absolutely persuaded that the works from scientists in their special areas, they have to keep it precise and they work on their fields. That can be air pollution, that can be biodiversity, marine biology, whatever. Yes, I think it's right. But more and more scientists claim, okay, we want to be very precise as scientists because this is our responsibility and this is our obligation. But on the other way, we also want to communicate and we want to step out of our ivory tower. And of course, this is fantastic, you know, and there again, sometimes if they work together with artists, then this sort of hermetic situation of knowledge can open up very much to the public. And if you want really that the average public now in our time is understanding what is a climate report and what is the dramatic situation about biodiversity, or what is the issue of contemporary arts and why do these guys behave like this and just not only paint paintings on their easels, you know, and then we have to communicate with society.
Can you give us an example of what led you so optimistic?
Well, as I said, you know, in my statement, there's no time left for pessimism. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist because we have no other option. If you are not optimistic, what is the result? We all get depressed, you know. I mean, where does that lead to? You know, if we all lead going into depression, we are not shaping the future, and therefore I keep optimistic. Or let's say so, you know, if you're talking about the Anthropocene and all this terrible thing the industrialized society brought up in the last 150 years. They also brought up good things, let's face it, you know. But all these critical things like the carbonization and so on, you know, they were started by human beings. So we are intelligent enough also to overcome with it, because we cannot leave it to the ants or to the worms or something like that, you know. So I believe humans have the capacity to make the change towards the good. So I keep optimistic, and the reason also why I keep optimistic is we owe it to the future generations. We owe it to all the upcoming generations. We cannot say, okay, we don't care what happens in 2 generations for people as it comes to air, as it comes to pollution in big cities, you know, like in China, which is absolutely madness, you know. No, we make decisions as a form of responsibility towards future generations, because we owe them We owe them to the kids, absolutely. I have a son who is 27. He studied philosophy, and I argue very, very much with him about that. And I can see there's so many young people, which I also have seen now in COP everywhere. All these young organizations, all these young students and people, they are concerned, but they want to make something. And we owe them, and with our experience, we can tell them, pick this up, look at it this way, and do it your own way.
So what politics are not as convinced as you?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Why, in your opinion?
You know, I referred to a statement from a woman who is from the Canadian Council. She was in this talk 2 days ago with Naomi Klein. We all know about Naomi Klein, okay, but she made the most important statement as it comes to the politics. And she's an important delegate, I guess, from the Canadian government, and she said, you know, there are 2 layers of COP21. And one layer is the one which are the policymakers and the politics, and they are actually not the real important ones. It's from the basement which is important. So she said, the real agenda is with the politics, but the real decisions come from the basement, and I really appreciate that very much. It's hard to trust the politics, you know, because they're telling us since years and years and years, and we go back to Rio de Janeiro, and then we go to Copenhagen, and then we go to Stockholm, and then we go to Lima, and so on, and we have 1,000 times the same debates about anything, and finally they don't even sign the papers. And now coming down then to one country, we can take Sweden, we can take Switzerland, we can take any other country. I don't see any real big steps as it comes. Just to give you a very interesting example, I read today online from the Swiss television. The Swiss Council, with all the parliament, decided yesterday that new taxes on ecology are turned down, totally refused. No addition taxes to carbon, to whatever. So the politicians, they seem not to understand that we have urgently to do something. No, the parliament just turned it down and said, no, you don't do it. So a classical example why we have a hard time to trust. But nevertheless, I believe in negotiations. If one of the political leaders are willing and able to talk with artists or people involved in the arts, then let's talk with them. No enemies. Talk with them.
We will go back to the basement. We will ask if the public have some question to ask to George Steinman. No? No question? Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. I feel very inspired by your talk. That I'm quite surprised that you said even the science and the other sectors find it very difficult to be heard. But that in fact art and scientists, if they work together, do you think we work more in a higher and more profound way of working with scientists? Would that make it more credibility for both parties? Because like MIT, now they have artists in residency to work with scientists and biologists for many issues. Do you think maybe with COP21, we open more connections to lead our artists to work with scientists and jointly push the agenda further? What do you think?
Yes, I like this question very much because thank you for that. MIT is it's a good point. Yes, there are several universities and institutes all around the world who are including artists now, for artists in residencies or in transdisciplinary processes, working in the laboratories with scientists together and so on and so on, you know. And I participated myself in several things like that, you know. Science Meets Art was one in Berlin, for instance. So that's a good way to do it, because then, yes, you know, artists have sort of like a little problem, because we have not an institute behind us. So of course, if you can say, you know, the university from the MIT from Boston, so on, you know, these artists and these scientists, they joined together for a project, and the University of, or MIT in Boston or whatever, is now taking contact with the decisions makers from the politics, then it may has a little bit more power in it. So of course, I support this very, very much, that the scientists and artists are joining party to get a stronger voice as it comes. And you know, when you ask, yeah, it's surprising to hear that scientists, which were thinking are so profound, not even this knowledge is really taken in an accurate way serious, you know. I was shocked myself to hear that from several scientists during the last days, you know, that they think we are not really taken serious. Anyways, yeah, so this collaboration between scientists and artists, perfect. I support it very much.
So Lydia asked you how or do artists change anything anyway? Are they able to change anything regarding the COPs, for example? And you were pointing out the possible or non-possible influence on the political negotiations. That's one thing, but I think the importance of art and of artists is the sensitization of the public. Because the main problem is maybe not the political negotiations and the political will or non-will. I think the main problem is us. We are the masses and we can influence. So I think that the arts is really an important instrument to influence all of us, to give us like new ideas, to give us possible solutions, to think. Yesterday we did a big event with Little Sun at École Massillon, and we were working with over 100 kids, and I think, and they were touched, and Olafur Eliasson was touched, and everybody was like, said, oh my God, we should think more about renewable energies. And I think this is your responsibility as an artist as well. You are collaborating with scientists and with politicians, etc., but you are also pointing out or addressing the public with your shows, with your exhibitions.
Yes,
with
of
your
course.
That's my question. Is that one of your intentions as well? Is that one of your missions or not?
Well, of course, you know, as it comes to education for sustainable dimensions. I mean, education, communication with society is very, very important. I mean, I didn't talk now about this, but I made several projects only with children and students. One was, for instance, in the University of Lüneburg in Germany. It was an UNESCO project. And it was incredibly fruitful, you know, very much so. Yes, of course, I believe in that. And I also think so. This is important that artists are, just like with the example you said from yesterday, yes, that's a very good way to communicate and make more consciousness towards the people, to the society and to children. Absolutely, because yes, education is certainly something I consider as being very, very important. Yes, indeed, you know. Yes. And when you say about that's maybe also the responsibility of artists. Yes. You know, finally, it doesn't have to be that an artist is always talking at what I do just right now, you know, but his work can talk, you know. So we can also trust in this, that our work, no matter if it's an installation, if it's a film, it's very subtle, something small, you know, and certainly, it can have an impact to people who are looking at it. The question is how you bring kids into museums, or how you bring kids, or you make something on the street, or something like that. So there's a big discussion, but basically, certainly, to work with society, working with children, very, very, very important issue, you know. And it just comes up, I would like to quote something which maybe sounds a little bit crazy, but fits very well into this. into this question from you. May some of you have heard that John Paul II, the old, not anymore living Pope, he has written during his entire time, and nobody knew about it, he has written during all his time texts and issues about ecology and the ecological problem on this planet. But for whatever reasons, these essays were lost. And now, half a year ago, in a publishing company, there was a book published, John Paul's Call for Ecological Actions, The Lost Teachings on Ecology by Pope Paul II. And I quote you something which is amazingly fitting to your question. He writes there, "We have removed ourselves from the essential meaning of life and the means to sustain life, while destroying ourselves spiritually, morally, emotionally, and economically, as we have separated ourselves from the natural world in which we live." And in the same chapter, he says, "And artists in particular are called upon to collectively use their power to inspire society in this work." Yeah. Serious talk, huh?
Another question? Okay. Maybe we can just leave you. Thank you very much for this face-to-face.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good questions. Thank you very much. All right.
Quand en ville le grain se lève, vent de nerfs agités, que se ternissent les rêves. Dans ma réalité, je veux des balades sur la grève, oh, un peu d'humanité, un moins.